So, Bethany, you wrote a fascinating piece for Deseret News about this whole debate over defining a woman and how you believe that this discussion and debate actually helps Republicans in the midterms. Tell us a little bit about that perspective.
Yeah, so I think that before the last year or so, I think a lot of people the average American saw this debate and just thought it was like silliness as we say, sort of the Jews say mishigas. It was just nonsense, and it is just nonsense. But what this last year has sort of shown the average American is that it's now becoming a danger. It's becoming a danger to women in a lot of ways. In women's sports, we're seeing it with Leah Thomas. And I think that one of the sort of untouched upon areas in which this really endangers women that Republicans should be talking about because it kind of encroaches on progressive turf is in women's prisons. When we are putting biological males in a prison setting with vulnerable women, often those male prisoners have a history of violence. It's a recipe for catastrophe for women. And the silence from the left is deafening. And I think that just from a more moral perspective, we need to be speaking up about that. But sort of speaking a little bit more cravenly, it's a political opportunity because progressives are betraying all of the ideals that they claim to sort of know and love, and they've betrayed women. They've betrayed women, our progress, our safety, you name it. And this is a real opportunity for Republicans to call them out and sort of try to take back womanhood from the left's attempts to strip us of that, and protect women's safety and progress and all of our sort of capabilities as they pertain to sports.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because, as you said, a couple of years ago, people would have dismissed this. I don't think people would have realized we'd be maybe where
Yeah.
we are right now on it. It's a little strange to be watching people struggle to define things that really aren't that hard to define. And especially when you look at the polling on the issue, and I know you talked a little bit about this in your Deseret piece, but why do you think there is such a struggle among some, particularly on the left, to define what a woman is, to
Yeah.
set parameters around some of the things that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, so they believe that it's a feeling, being a woman or being a man, but it's always a woman. Being a woman is a feeling. And when you dress in a certain way and you wear women's clothing, that's enough. That's femininity, and it's hard for them to sort of nail down what a woman is because they have no real definition. And the progressive left, the really, really radical far left woke aspect of the Democratic Party is driving the Democratic Party off a cliff. Yesterday, we saw the Biden administration on Trans Visibility Day say that we have to support gender affirming care for children. And what that euphemism really means is that we should support surgeries and puberty blockers and hormones for children under the age of 18. And the reality of those treatments is maiming them physically. Hormonally, it is almost certainly sterilizing them. And so this is now a human rights issue, and it's not just a political issue. A lot of young people who sort of self-identify as transgender end up detransitioning. They say, I've shifted, and those sort of camps of kids usually fall in one of two camps. Not always, but almost always. They're either troubled emotionally or they have mental health issues, and or will later identify as lesbian or gay. And so what we are doing is watching the left advocate for treatments that will sterilize children who have mental health struggles and who are gay and lesbian. If that's not eugenics, I don't know what is.
Well, you would think that, and what you're referencing there has been some research in the area that indicates exactly what you just said. You would think that before any policies were made on something as sensitive as children under the age of 18, that there would be a ton of research being
Yeah,
conducted on this to understand what exactly is happening. It almost feels like that step was skipped,
it was.
in this,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a
Yeah, no, it
little.
absolutely was.
Yeah, it's bizarre to watch. And
Yeah.
yeah, I have to ask you because, I mean, you like me, we've covered a lot of these issues over the years, and the right in America has been losing a lot of the culture war issues, right? And so here
Yeah.
comes this issue, and you wrote about this in your piece, sort of analyzing the behavior of conservatives on it, because it's a little bit more in your face, the behavior. They're taking a more offensive measure to this. Do you think this is definitively winnable for conservatives?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a really terrifying, brave new world that progressives are trying to push us into, and it's not a live and let live situation because the treatment that they're recommending again is sterilizing. It's physically altering in a way that is extremely damaging. If you read the stories of people who have detransitioned, the physical toll of the surgeries and the hormones that they've put themselves through is catastrophic and irreversible. It's the basis of the book from Abigail Shrier, Irreversible Damage. That's why she called it Irreversible Damage. But now there's, even in the short amount of time since she released that book and it became a bestseller, there are so many more stories of detransitioners, and they're chilling.
Well, and those stories are not often heard, and that's part of
Yeah.
the problem here, right? If somebody has a story to share, why are we not allowing people? And obviously, there are some venues that are allowing those stories to be told, but why are we not allowing those people to speak out and share what they've gone through? Again, that's another source of information you would think
Yeah.
we would want to have in this discussion, especially when it comes to children.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the only people who are willing to hear these stories are conservatives. And not necessarily conservatives, but sort of anti woke people. So, Barry Weiss on her Substack, which is fantastic, she's been publishing a lot of research and first person narratives about this. Abigail Shrier on her Substack has been doing the same. It's called Truth Fairy. There's a handful of people who are willing to give voice to these stories, but Barry and Abigail are extraordinarily brave and extraordinarily tough. And that's what you have to be as a journalist to put up with the bullying that happens from the radical left. Another really two wonderful examples are Jesse Singal and Katie Herzog. They also give voice to a lot of these stories. And all four of those people, none of them I think would maybe call themselves conservative, maybe Abigail Shrier, but the other three, they're just really honest journalists who want to get to the bottom of the story that isn't being told. And unfortunately, in this day and age, there are practically no others like them on this issue because people are scared, they're bullied.
Well, they're scared because they see that you get, banned
Yeah.
from Twitter unless you're willing to delete a tweet, or you get,
Yep.
I mean, it's the insanity surrounding, and this is a whole other conversation that we should have at some point. The
Yeah.
free speech issues surrounding this are also, pervasive, and I think we're seeing a real erosion of the ability of people to tolerate other viewpoints that they simply just don't like, so they want them
Yeah.
to be gone, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the tweet that you just referenced. I mean, there was a satire tweet from the Babylon Bee that got them frozen. So it's big tech censorship, and it's also just interpersonal censorship, and in a way, and I think that that's scarier. Katie Herzog, who I just mentioned, has talked a lot about how she was personally canceled. She's a lesbian, and she's a leftist, and all over where she lived in Portland, Oregon, people put up bumper stickers, Katie Herzog is a transphobe. And she would walk out of her door and see those stickers. And it's one thing to put up with bullying in person, but all of that bullying happened literally on her front lawn. And it hit home for her in a honestly scary way. And they understand that they are advocating for a radical shift in our cultural foundation. And they know they have to fight dirty to get there. And that's what they're doing.
Well, and that's my last question for you on this, because the fight dirty part of this and having to be tough on this, there's a lot that has been said about former President Donald Trump, and we don't need to get
Yeah.
into all of that because we know that we could have a 3 hour conversation about Trump and the different views on him. But the idea of fighting for something, that is something a
Yeah.
lot of people saw in him, sort of teaching people, hey, you have to battle, you have to be willing to
Yeah.
go to the fight. Do you think he's had a big impact on this particular discussion, at least in terms of the tactics of how people are engaging?
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was going to use, his tactics. I think that the best thing for Republicans moving forward is to take President Trump's fearlessness and his tactics of going on offense and never stepping back and moving that forward. And I think that the Republican that you're seeing do that the most effectively is Ron DeSantis. And we're seeing that with this bill. I can't remember the HB something or other. They call it the Don't Say Gay bill. Obviously, it's not that.
I want to say
But
it's
he
1557, but I'm forgetting the
Yeah, that
exact
sounds
number. Yeah.
right. That
Yeah.
sounds right. But he's just relentless, and Disney keeps on sort of putting his back to the wall, and he just will not back down. And that's how Republican legislatures and governors and leaders and politicians have to be. You have to take that lesson from President Trump, because if you do not stand up for what we believe in, they will steamroll you.
Well, and that, to your point there, one of the interesting things when we talk about media framing, yeah, the word gay is not anywhere in that bill. When you pull up the 5-page bill and you read it, the concepts are there, but that word is not there. There's nobody in the bill advocating through the bill that you should not be able to say the word gay anywhere. That is not
Yeah.
accurate. And so it was interesting to watch him call reporters out on that and to say, where did you get this term from? Everyone's endorsed this term. Where did it come from? That's part of that tactic. And it is intriguing to watch because I think a lot of conservatives took a more sanitized and calm approach in the past to these issues. So I'm
Yeah.
interested to see what comes next.
Yeah, me too. And I hope that the tactics of Ron DeSantis are contagious in the Republican Party.
Well, listen, I so appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you on again very soon. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much.